What if the person you think you are is just a fraction of who you truly are? What if years of conditioning and surviving in a challenging world have left you clinging to strategies and beliefs that mask your truest nature? I'm Catherine Duca, psychotherapist and self-esteem coach, and you're listening to Who Do You Think You Are? A show that looks beneath our psychological masks and uncovers our profoundly messy, beautiful, brilliant, tender-hearted essence. Join me as we go in search of the hidden power of our true selves. I'm so glad you're here. You know, that's the truth. I am so glad you're here and I'm here and we are together. Welcome to Who Do You Think You Are? A podcast dedicated to you, to your authenticity, to helping you learn how to have the highest regard for yourself, how to live from a place of genuine self-love and self-respect, and how to make yourself a priority in your own life. Meet me here each week for curated tips and strategies designed to help you drop your psychological mask, connect with your truest essence, and simply live life more easily. Why? Because we know that when we approach life in this way, we naturally and effortlessly and organically have more room, more generosity, and more love for one another. And friends, when have we needed that more than this very moment? I think you'll agree. We are in rocky waters, choppy waters, and we need love. And this show is dedicated to self-love because when we come from self-love, that radiates out, and everyone who crosses our path is able to pick that up, and it gives them permission to do the same. So when we say, be the peace you want to see in the world, I believe we can do that one conversation, one interaction at a time. So welcome. We are live, as you know, and so I invite you to comment, ask a question, present your point of view. Any and all comments are welcome here on the show. As always, I do remind you, if you are going through anything right now, anything troubling, anything pressing, anything that has you compromised, don't go it alone. Don't go it alone. Talk to someone. Good help is out there. Good help, competent help is available. Don't go it alone. If necessary, contact me. I would be more than happy to help you secure a referral to a good qualified mental health practitioner. But most important thing, do not go it alone. Okay? All right. So one more thing. If you enjoy the show, if you've been listening to these episodes and you've gotten some value, I ask you, please, to like, comment, subscribe to the network. You know, that makes the algorithm happy. And when the algorithm is happy, more and more people can have access to the show. So I appreciate that. Thank you in advance. So tonight's episode, do you hear what I hear? Do you hear what I hear? No, it is not. It is not the holiday season. We are talking about difficult conversations. We started this conversation last week. And what is a difficult conversation? And have you had any this week? Did you avoid any? Did you see one coming down the path and you dodged it? Well, if you did, I hope that tonight's conversation lends some support and gives you some concrete strategies that you can use to make your next difficult conversation a little less difficult, a little less dreaded, and maybe a bit more constructive. So, do you hear what I hear? Tonight, we are talking about the part of having a difficult conversation that has to do with listening. Listening, you know, so often when we talk about good communication, we talk about speaking. We talk about how to phrase things, how to deliver things, And of course, that is critically important. But tonight we're going to talk about the other side of the coin, because relationships, interactions, conversations, especially difficult ones, involve a give and take. It involves a reciprocity, right? One person is not just talking in a vacuum, not simply talking at you, but talking to you, hoping that you will receive what is being said and respond back. But we don't really talk enough about what is involved in listening. Many people think, I certainly used to think this myself, that listening was a passive activity. You know, you're merely being a container for the other person to say what they want to say. Well, in the listening position, we are a container, but there's much more to it than that. And listening is anything but passive. Now, to recap very briefly and tee us up for what's to come in this conversation, I want to remind you that last week we talked about approaching a difficult conversation with a certain mindset, where you envision the conversation as occurring between two bookends. And I'll go over what they are very briefly. The beginning bookend is to let the person know that you're having this conversation in a spirit of collaboration, in an atmosphere of wanting to make things better. A difficult conversation, if you want it to be productive, is never, I'm here to make you wrong and walk away. I'm here to tell you to, get lost and that's it. No, it's, I mean, unless someone is extremely toxic in your life and you have no recourse but to set a boundary where you can have no other, contact with that person, and you're letting them know, that's an announcement. That's really not a conversation. I'm talking about when there's someone in your life with whom you have a disagreement, the stakes are significant, and one or both of you are upset with the other, or upset with something that was said or wasn't said. So coming to the conversation in an atmosphere of, I really want to make this better with you. I want to clear the air. If you can convey that up front, that will go a long way toward paving a road of give and take and acceptance and understanding. So that's the one bookend. The other is to end letting the person know how you're leaving the conversation. Do you feel complete? Do you feel like you need to digest things a bit more? Do you, do you have to kind of sit with what came up in that conversation? Or do you feel complete? I feel, thanks for talking with me. I feel I have a lot more clarity around the issue. Thanks for speaking with me. I feel calmer. I feel more relaxed. I feel like I have a deeper understanding of how things went askew. How about you? You always want to follow it up with, I feel this way. How do you feel? Do you feel complete? Do you think we need to have a follow-up conversation here? Right? Both of these bookends are what I would call joining moves. They express goodwill, and you come in from an adversarial point of view more toward a partnership point of view. So that's very important, how you start and how you end. So with that, let's talk about difficult conversations, specifically listening. When we come to a tough talk, a delicate talk, a touchy talk, the other person is likely coming with some apprehension, They don't know how you're going to respond. So part of being a good listener is conveying an energy, that says, I am open to learning what you have to say. It's an energy, even if this is unspoken, you convey, I have a willingness, I come with a willingness to be surprised, to be, as I said last week, to even be wrong. I thought you did or didn't do something, and I was sure I knew why, and I was sure I knew what happened, but I come to this conversation open to the possibility that I might be completely wrong. And I'll tell you something, there are plenty of times when it is good to be wrong, when being wrong opens up a doorway, when being wrong or mistaken about your perception gives you more to work with. There's a saying that I find so interesting. I think it goes something like, often wrong, but never in doubt. Have you known people like that, or perhaps you have a little bit of that yourself? Uh, I'm very sure of what I'm saying. I really am sure of what I'm saying in terms of my perception of what happened. Of course, we have to have convictions about things, but I'm talking about the interaction and what we perceived happened. I'm very sure I might be dead wrong, but my energy says I'm never in doubt. I'm just sure of myself. And a lot of times when we come to a difficult conversation, we don't really have all of the facts. We don't necessarily have all of the information. But something that we humans do that I find fascinating and problematic is we tend to fill in the gaps with our own assumptions, right? Don't we do that? We have snippets of something, or we catch the tail end of something, and we construct in our mind's eye the whole movie version. You know, we're Spielberg all of a sudden, and we think we know the missing pieces. Well, a good listener comes ready to pivot, ready to recognize, oh, I thought one thing, but you're telling me something else. So that could be very valuable. Incidentally, I'm seeing some people in the chat. I want to say a general hello. I will definitely get to your comments and questions in just a few moments. So the biggest challenge I find with listening to a conversation where the other person is probably telling us something that's hard to hear. Maybe they are criticizing us intentionally or unintentionally, or perhaps we perceive what they're saying as criticism, and that can really trigger us, right? Especially if we have issues from the past, from our childhood, around being made to feel wrong. You know, there are so many people who were punished as children for making a mistake, right? I think in an early episode, I told you about someone I know who, as a young girl, made dinner for her family. She made lasagna. And when she served it to her family, well, her mother had passed, and she served it to her siblings and her father. And the dad took one bite of the lasagna and kind of like, he was irritated, and he pushed his dish away. And he said, there's too much damn salt in here. I'm not eating this. And this person, then and there, made unconsciously a lifelong vow to try her best to never make a mistake again. So this is a person who not only goes the extra mile, I mean, she pulls out all the stops. As an insurance policy, many people do this. Perhaps you do this. As an insurance policy against making an error. So it's perfectionism to the nth degree, because it's so painful to be told you didn't do something right. If that lasagna is not resolved, then you're forever braced, expecting and prepared to counter someone telling you you put too much salt in the lasagna, too much salt in air quotes. So one of the biggest challenges I think some people have, is they can't tolerate the discomfort. I was reading some research, uh, preparing a little bit more for tonight, and I read that most people, in this culture anyway, can barely tolerate, I think it said something like 10 to 12 seconds of criticism before they want to jump out of their skin, before they want to debate and counter and, say, absolutely not, no, 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 without listening to what the other person is saying, maybe underneath the criticism. So, this is why when we listen, in air quotes, we're thinking in our heads of our next response. So, we're not really hearing. We're not really hearing. We are rehearsing our lines because the tension of perhaps being wrong or made to feel wrong is just so uncomfortable in the body that we have to almost spit it back out, reject it in kind, and say, no way, no way. So if you know that you have a part of your history that has made you I would say hyper sensitive to criticism, then it really will go a long way to have the self-awareness that says, oh, I know myself by now. I recognize that I carry within me this hypersensitivity. And so I need to take a deep breath and maybe, take a moment, back up and say, something about this situation reminds me of my father with the lasagna, or in my case, my personal case, reminds me of the grammar school I went to, where if you challenged authority, if you asked a question that came across as a disagreement, you were punished. I mean, punished, you know? Um, so it's so important to recognize what we carry. It is not anyone's job. I say this all the time because it's so true. It's not anyone's job to tiptoe around us. Yes, I always say, if you know someone's history, if you know someone well enough that you know something about their history, maybe it's your partner, you know, a close friend. Yes, I think we should do what we can to be attuned and to be careful and caring. But it is not anyone's responsibility to save anyone from their history, or, not be true to yourself because you're aware of someone's history. We can be true to ourselves. We can be self-respecting. We can speak our truth and be kind. I believe we can deliver bad news. We can break up with someone. That's a question I get all the time. How do I break up with someone? We can even do that, which can be such an unpleasant thing to do, with kindness, with respect, conveying that we care for the person. Okay? So self-awareness here, as well as just about every topic we talk about, makes all the difference. Makes all the difference. Now, the other thing is, when we have a difficult conversation, it's important. So, let's highlight this. It's important, for the purposes of letting the other know that we hear them, it's important to validate their experience. Now, something that my clients often tell me is, well, Kathy, if I validate their experience, it's as though I'm agreeing with them. And I might as well say, you're right in everything you're saying. And I say, no, 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 that's not necessarily the same thing. We can validate someone's experience without agreeing with them because maybe our perception significantly contrasts with theirs. But we can validate by saying something like, what I hear you saying right now is XYZ. It doesn't mean that you think they're correct in what they heard. It doesn't mean you think you said what they think you said. You know, I mean, sometimes it ends in a, she said kind of thing. But the idea here is to let someone know, oh, okay. So what you're saying is when I said I would look in on you in the morning and I didn't call you until later that afternoon, it felt to you like I didn't care. What I'm hearing you say is you felt as though I wasn't a priority. And then if you could say, did I get that correct? Right? Did I get that correct? It's always good to ask, did what I think you said match what in fact you intended to say? So this is what I hear you saying. Did I get it right? And if the person says no, then you say, okay, can you please say it again? And give them the room and give them the space and give them your attention to where they can repeat it. Now, using that example, you can then say, is there more? Now, imagine this. You barely can stand the conversation to begin with, and I'm suggesting you ask, is there more? Wow, that may feel really difficult, but I am suggesting that you try that out because when you say, is there more? You are really letting the person know you are interested in understanding what they say in a complete way. You're not just looking for the minimal, information so that you can say your piece and then, get the heck out of town. You really want to let them know. So is there more? And then they tell you more. And then you say, okay, is there more to that? And this is how you, as a listener, how you promote and facilitate a flow that carries less judgment, more interest, and more curiosity. Because the whole idea here is to learn what the other person holds dear to them, what is important to them. Okay? So tell me more. Is there more? All right? It's very easy if you're triggered to go into a debate mode and debate the facts. Well, I said I would call you in the morning. I called you in the afternoon. What's the difference? Well, the difference is the meaning behind the complaint. And the meaning behind the complaint in the example that I used is I interpreted your not calling when you said you would as you weren't thinking of me. You didn't care about me. Maybe you don't care about me. Maybe I'm imagining how close we are. You see, so it can be very loaded for the other person. And if you don't get to the underlying meaning, if you just debate the top level, the facts of the matter, yeah, you won't really be connecting. It won't really be as deep a conversation as it could be. And the level of understanding can only be commensurate with the depth of the dialogue. If you have superficial dialogue, you probably have a superficial relationship. You can't expect more, I submit to you, unless you open the door for more. Okay, so dialogue is better than debate. Now, lest you think someone comes to the table doing a monologue And your job is just to be quiet until they, until they take a breath. And your job is to be passive. Lest you think that, let me tell you that how you respond verbally and non-verbally, this is so interesting. How you respond as the listener actually has a direct bearing on how the speaker speaks. It is not a monologue that the person throws at you, or, I mean, it shouldn't be if you're talking about a constructive conversation. It's not a monologue and you are a passive, recipient, and now you're going to hit play and come back with your answers and your defensiveness. No, the more receptive, open, and willing you are to truly learn, the more they will pick that up. And chances are their delivery will be more in line with the way you can hear it. Because it makes sense, doesn't it? If you bristle, if you counter argue, if you kitchen sink it, if you say, and you, and you, and you, and how about that time and the time before, and since you were born, and all of that, that person is going to match your energy. Who can override that? It would take, I don't know what to override that. So rather than have that person match your energy and then you escalate on top of that, and then you're one-upping each other, and then the whole thing deteriorates, rather than do that, remember to validate what I hear you saying. I'm not quite sure I got it. Tell me if this is correct. Goes a very, very long way. The other thing to keep in mind is if somebody says something and it's hard for you to hear, it's genuinely hard for you to hear. It's like it's getting under your skin, or it feels painful, or it evokes something in you from the past. I think it's not only okay, I think it's helpful to say, that's really hard for me to hear. I don't want to become defensive, but I have to tell you, that's really hard for me to hear. I think I need a moment, just to process that. Or if the whole conversation, or you get to a point where you're like, oh, this is really, I'm just flooded right now, rather than push through or react from that place of overwhelm and anxiety, because think about it, right? What good could possibly come from that? I think it's very useful to raise your hand and say, gosh, this is really hard for me. I don't know that I can continue right now. I think I need a few minutes, or I think I just need to kind of stay quiet here. Or, you know what? I don't think I can be my best in this conversation right now. I'm going to suggest we table it and come back to it when maybe I'm in a better position to hear you. Let me know in the chat, which I'm going to get to after the break, if you would appreciate hearing that from someone. Rather than, there you go, I just have to get out of here. I can't, you and all of that, shutting it down. That's not helpful. What's the point of talking? But if you genuinely say, I have to let you in on this. This is, difficult, painful, stirring, and I feel myself closing down. Let's table it. I think that's a very kind thing to say. Now, here is the caveat. Very, very important. If you say such a thing, it is on you to make sure you revisit that conversation. And I believe it's the responsible thing to do to let the person know when you plan on doing that. An hour from now, after you've had some dinner, tomorrow, or 3 days from now. Because probably if it was up to you, you would never come back to the conversation. And it's not fair to leave the other person hanging. It will heighten their anxiety. It won't feel like a fair thing to do. And it certainly won't promote constructive dialogue. So if you say, which is perfectly fine, I can't do this now, I need to do it some other time. How about we check in with each other tomorrow, and I'll let you know if I'm ready then, and I hope I will be. All right, you have to offer some kind of commitment. Otherwise, the other person kind of, is out there twisting, right? And if you're on the other end, and you will be, there will be times in a difficult conversation where you will have something to say. You will express your displeasure with someone. Try not to be that person, because if you are, there are things you can do to regulate yourself. Try not to be that person who follows the other person into every single room. And what about this? And what about that? And can you talk to me now? And it's been 10 minutes. And are you coming back? Anxious, anxious, anxious. So if that makes you anxious, raise your hand and say, I don't know if you know it or not, but waiting makes me anxious. I know if we have another time where we're going to come back and revisit this, I can wait that long. I can wait that long. Don't be following people out to their cars, harassing them. You don't experience it as harassment. You experience it as need to know. I can't sit with this anxiety now. I have to resolve it now. I'm so preoccupied. I'm so flooded. Please, let's do it now. And the other person is like, now doesn't work because they're overwhelmed. So again, self-awareness, self-regulation. You take a deep breath. You promise each other that you will come back to it. If I know you're going to come back to it, I can more easily give you the space that you need to digest, to ponder, to reflect. I'll wrap this part up with a bow, take a break, come back to the chat, and then add a few more points, some things that you could do by saying, I was going to wrap this up with a bow. I forgot what I was going to say. Wrapping it up with a bow, wrapping it up with a bow. It just escapes me. Now, if that happens in a conversation, hopefully the other person will give you grace to try to collect your thoughts. Oh, and thank you for the grace, because here's what I was going to say, wrapping this up with a bow. The difference between reacting and responding, very important. Reacting is our knee-jerk automatic response. It's impulsive. It usually comes from some level of trigger. It's a reflex. When the doctor uses that instrument to make your knee go up, that's how we respond when we are in reaction mode. Much, much better to be in response mode. A response is more measured, it's more thoughtful, it's more grounded. It's not off the cuff. It's a bit more contemplative, even if you don't take that long to contemplate, right? It's you can hear it's deeper and simply more measured than being reactive. So let's put all these things in the hopper. Let's take a short break, digest this. We'll come back to the chat. I can't wait to hear what you have to say. And then I'll give you some tools, some strategies that you can use, tools really, skills, to make your next difficult conversation a little less difficult. You're listening to Catherine Duca, psychotherapist and self-esteem coach, here talking about how to have a difficult conversation, how to do active listening. We'll take a short break. Stay with me.
What would Louise say? Join us every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. Hosted by Reverend Martine Bernard. Explore the wisdom of Louise Hay. Brought to you by New Thought Media Network. Dive into Louise's teachings. Experience healing and empowerment. Reverend Martine shares insights. Connect with a contemporary audience. Unlock your potential. Transform your life with love. Embrace positivity and healing. Join our vibrant community. Ready to join us? Let's spread love and wisdom together. Please like, share, and subscribe. Only on New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center Ottawa, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
What if the person you think you are is just a fraction of who you truly are? What if years of conditioning and surviving in a challenging world have left you clinging to strategies and beliefs that mask your truest nature? I'm Catherine Duca, psychotherapist and self-esteem coach, and you're listening to Who Do You Think You Are? A show that looks beneath our psychological masks and uncovers our profoundly messy, beautiful, brilliant, tender-hearted essence. Join me as we go in search of the hidden power of our true selves. I'm so glad you're here. Welcome back. Thank you for rejoining me. We are talking about difficult conversations and how murky and muddy they can become, but we are zooming in on active listening and how that can actually shape and inform the outcome of a difficult conversation. And by shape and inform, I mean just that. We cannot control, nor really should we, control how a conversation goes. We shouldn't manipulate, we shouldn't do anything of the sort. But by listening actively, and I'll get into some more specific points about that, but as I said, conveying an attitude of openness and receptivity, that will impact how the speaker speaks. If they think they're talking to a brick wall, they're going to talk one way. If they're thinking they're talking to someone with a reasonably open mind, they're going to speak differently. So you have a direct hand in shaping the outcome by how you show up as a listener. All right, let me say hello to people in the chat. Claudia, good evening. Good to see you. Anthony, good to see you. Anthony, I read your comment during the break. I'm afraid it's a little too involved and lengthy to get into, so I'm not going to address it here tonight. You're welcome to email me, and I'd be happy to give you my perspective on that if you'd like. Just the time and the format, I don't think allows me to get into that. But thank you for being here, and thank you for calling to mind this example. Claudia, back to you. With me, it was meatballs. Then now today, I make a pretty good meatball. All right, Claudia, pretty good meatball. Right. But I'm sure that you and the other listeners took in the point that being criticized at such a young age for something that that person did, I'm sure, with her whole young heart, and then to be criticized in that way, there's too much damn salt in here, I'm not eating this, would be, scarring. And what we do with an experience like that is we make that into a lifelong promise and a lifelong vow around which we conduct ourselves. I'm not going to make a mistake. I'm not going to make a mistake. Please don't tell me I've made a mistake. I can't handle it. Me make a mistake? I can't make a mistake. You must be wrong. So it really is a lens through which we take in information. But the lens, really, it's like it's an emotional cataract of sorts, right? You can see that. So thank you, Claudia. Thank you. Janine, I love this so much. Yet many of us are adept at relating on this level, and the people we're having conflict with cannot or choose not to. Well, that's true. I can't argue with that. There are people who, for whatever reason, have a certain threshold. They have taken their self-awareness journey, but so far, I mean, they're, I was talking to I wanted to mention something about interrupting. Being a good listener, of course, means not interrupting. And then I reflected on some people I've known and worked with over the years where I think because of how their brain is wired, they have difficulty containing their impulsivity when it comes to making their point. They're not trying to give you a hard time. They really can't help it. So when we encounter someone who may be in that space, we want to, if anything, I think it's okay to say, I really am interested in what you have to say, but it's hard to stay with you. It's hard to listen when you keep interrupting me. So what I've done is I've said, I'm going to mention this one thing. And then after I do, I'd like to know what your take is on this. So I'm very careful, or I have been careful in those instances, not to layer things up because it can be just too much for some people. So I give a little bit and then I say, now let's talk about that. And then a little bit more and let's talk about that. But what if you're with someone who you said chooses not to? Well, what can you do? What can you do? It's important for me in my life to try my best to comport myself the way I want to. And I put some conscious effort into, even though that person may be buzzing and spinning and interrupting or being very black or white, no appreciation for nuance. I might say, gee, that strikes me as black and white. Can we talk about the gray in there? And sometimes they can go with you and sometimes they can't. But I don't want to lose my footing. I don't want to be thrown off my game. Sometimes I am, but I aspire not to be. Listen, it's like being a tennis player, right? There are always going to be people who play on your level and people who play, who are more expert than you. You want to play up. People don't want to play down. I mean, maybe we meet in the middle. But Janine, I would say to that, you're right. Depends what kind of agreement you want to make with yourself about how to handle your end of the conversation, regardless of what they do. So I hope that was in the ballpark of a good response to your comment. Just Judy says, such a good point, Janine. I'm taking notes. All right, Claudia, back to you. A neighbor called. She was upset. I listened. I gave her a solution. She agreed, but then she started yelling. I listened. She yelled again. Don't know if I handled it properly. Okay. She was upset. I listened. I gave her a solution. She agreed, but then she started yelling. Okay. Sounds unpleasant, Claudia. I'm sorry that that happened. I'm guessing that you were left feeling a bit off kilter. Um, the most I can say about that, but I think this is an important point. When someone does speak to us, now this isn't unique to a difficult conversation per se, but I just think it's good communication practice to ask the person in some manner, what do you need from me? Do you need advice? Do you need me to brainstorm with you on a solution? Or do you just need me to listen? Do you just need to get it off your chest and you just need me to listen? Because I am all ears and I'm ready to hear you. Sometimes people don't need a solution and they can bristle when you offer one. Claudia, I have no idea if this is what went on, but it just sparks this thought in me that if they're not looking for a solution and you offer one, they may feel as though they weren't being heard. They weren't being heard for the underlying feeling that they had, or the frustration, perhaps, or the disappointment. So I don't know. I'm not sure what else to say beyond that. I can hear your generosity of spirit there. You tried twice to give her a solution. I don't know why she would have yelled. Certainly that's not a pleasant position to be in. Hey, listen, where two or more are gathered, anything can happen. They don't call it difficult for no reason. Conversations are very crowded, as are relationships. You think there's only two of you, but there's a whole host. There's everyone in your background that you bring to the table by virtue of you have them in your head. And there's everyone that they bring and every experience that they've had. And sometimes we can be a corrective emotional experience for people by not judging, by not pouncing, by not making them wrong, by asking for more. We can give someone an experience they've never had before. They may or may not be able to take it in that moment. Perhaps later they can reflect on it, but you've responded perhaps very differently than anyone else in their life. And that's not nothing. So thank you, Claudia, for that. Okay, some things that you can do, some specific things that you can do. The nonverbal. There are many, aren't they? How many times have you spoken to someone and yeah, they were looking at you, but they also gave you an eye roll, or maybe you did this to someone, or they gave a humph, a sigh, or kind of a there you go again. Or has anyone ever done this, or have you done this? They kind of blink at you. I call that blinking you out. Sometimes when someone doesn't want to hear what you're saying, they unconsciously, like literally, blink you out. So let's be aware as good active listeners of our nonverbals, of our body language. Are we making eye contact? Eye contact is so important. Are we checking our body language? Right? Are we mumbling under our breath? Are we kind of like dropping our shoulders in that kind of adolescent way of, not helpful, not helpful. If you feel the urge to do that, one of the first tips is monitor yourself and try to contain those reactions. All right. The other thing is ask good questions. A good active listener asks good questions rather than yes or no questions. Ask open-ended. Ask open-ended. It's best not to interrogate, but to convey a curiosity. All right. Interrogation has a certain energy to it. There's a certain spin on the ball, if you will. Genuine curiosity feels more inviting. Again, avoid making assumptions or filling in the blanks. It's so easy to assume you know what the other person is thinking or where they're coming from, but you may not. You probably don't. Odds are you don't. So ask clarifying questions. When you didn't call me, I didn't want to make an assumption, but this is what passed through my mind. I thought for a moment maybe you didn't care. Maybe I wasn't a priority. But I don't know if I'm making that up. Did is that what you think? Is that how you feel? Because guess what? You can tell me that. See, the whole idea of this is being real and being honest and speaking your truth and asking the other person to speak theirs, not brutally, not insensitively, not with callousness, of course, but with, you know, honesty. I think honesty is kindness. Someone asked a question last week. I think it was Catherine. I didn't get a chance to answer it. What if the difficult conversation is one in which you think you may be hurting someone's feelings? Those are the easiest, I think she said, or I've imagined, those might be the easiest to avoid. I totally get that. Totally get that. But depending on what it is, that's a big, disclaimer. But depending on what it is, honesty can be very kind. People know when you're beating around the bush, sugarcoating, omitting. They know it in their knower, right? So listen, this isn't easy for me to say. I have to have a conversation or, thank you for meeting me here. What I'm going to bring up is not going to be easy or pleasant for either one of us. But I feel that if I don't bring it up, I'm going to carry something, and I don't even know if I should carry it. I'm not quite sure how to feel about this. So you ask for help. You ask for clarification. You can see what that does. So if you don't have all the facts, and trust yourself that you don't fill in the gaps with your own, I don't know, your own details or how you'd like it to go. So often we have these talks through the filter of our own projections. We phrase things so that we hear what we want to hear. Again, that's too much spin on the ball. Honesty is can be unvarnished without being unkind. Do I have it right? We went over that. Tell me more. And is there more to that? And I think it's so beautiful to say at the end, do you feel complete? Oh, and even if they say yes, depending upon the situation, if you feel there's more, you may feel complete now, but if you go home and you feel there's more, let me know. I'm completely open to continuing this conversation at another time, right? How many times have you walked away? Oh, I wish I had said that. Why didn't I ask that? Why didn't I include that? Probably you went into fight or flight. Ask for a part two. I think with these skills applied, I think you're more inclined to get more grace and more room and more collaboration. So don't be afraid of a part two. And the last thing I want to bring up is being quiet, being silent, and pausing when someone is talking, when they've just told you something. Reflect, digest, let them be with what they've just said. Let them feel into your receptivity. Don't blow past that or try not to. Try to let the moment of quiet, I'll call it digesting, right? Contemplating. Try to let that be as important a component as I think it really is. It's not ba 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 ba. It's okay. I'm hearing you. I'm taking it in. I'm taking what you're saying. You know, I'm taking it seriously. And I want you to know that. So I think using these guideposts can be instrumental in you approaching a difficult conversation, not in fight or flight mode, but with some preparation ahead of time, some internal grounding, and knowing that you have these skills in your tank that you can bring to bear. I find them to be respectful, fair, kind, considerate to both of you, right? The conversation is probably difficult for both of you. And if it can be a constructive conversation, that progress is also shared by both of you. So you can go from you versus me versus you, to let's see how we can get through this. But because you're attending this conversation tonight, because you're listening to this show, you may have skills that the other person doesn't have. Share them. See what happens. See if you bring the person along. See if the person comes with you. Janine, they may not, but then again, they may. Sometimes we don't know until we try. So be the peace we want to see in the world. Yeah, let's do that. Let's have peaceful conversations, spirited conversations, truthful conversations, sensitive and delicate conversations, but they can be peaceful. They can convey the namaste, the highest in me acknowledges the highest in you. That's how I'm coming to this table tonight. We can do that. And I think when we do, surprising things can happen. So thank you all for listening. Thank you to those in the chat. It's always a pleasure and a privilege to be coming through your earbuds. Thank you so very much. Pay attention to those difficult moments this week, difficult conversations. Apply some of these guideposts. See what happens and let me know. Until next week, you've been listening to Who Do You Think You Are? Take good care of yourself. I'll see you next time. Good night.